Have to on that, John.
I'm starting to mute people. I'm a little behind the 8 ball.
You're fine. I do appreciate you being here, taking the time. I think we got a good session tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dwayne Smith. Let him start us off with prayer.
Dwayne, I muted you by accident.
Okay.
There you go. Now? I hear you now.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. Hope you all have a Merry Christmas, and hope that you have a great time with family and enjoy the traditions. But we also need to be reminded that this is the time of the year where we worship and we acknowledge the birth of Christ. So let us go ahead and pray together, all right? Father God, we do thank you, Lord, for this meeting. Thank you for John and for arranging this, and for the technology and for the wisdom that you have given to so many. Now, Father, I pray that as we go into this Christmas season, I pray, Father, that as we go into it, that we would have the renewed perspective of the reason why we have it, and that is because of Jesus and his lordship and being our Savior. And Father, we do thank you and we praise you, and give us wisdom and guidance tonight, and be with Mike and all those others, Father, to be leading us. And we just pray for your guidance and for your wisdom. And we want to bring you all the praise and honor and glory for all things. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Mike, you're muted.
Why'd you mute me? Guys, I just thought to go ahead and piggyback on what Dwayne said. Remember what season it is. I do want to wish every one of you a Merry Christmas. I do have tendency to forget those things once in a while, but I do wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. It's been a very unique year. We all know 2020. Everywhere I went today, everybody's ready for it to get gone, and I think we'll deal with it, and I think we'll deal with it in 21 again. I would want to welcome. We've got some guests on tonight, and we got some other regional supervisors on, and we've got some other umpires and guests. So I'd like to welcome those guys tonight. A couple of housekeeping rules. If you have not registered on Dragonfly, please do so as soon as you can. You have got to show up on Dragonfly as well as the Arbiter, or I can't use you. And that comes from the state. That's not my rule. That comes from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. Mr. Drybus has said once assignments start going out, he is going to check, and he will check it, the names against Dragonfly. So if you're not on that one, I can't give you a game on Arbiter unless it's a middle school game. So let's take care of that as soon as we can. You've got, like I said, you got to end up on both rosters. Other than that, remember our meeting again next week on the 27th. Mr. Jay Pierce, and I think he's on tonight also from the MILB Academy. He'll be our instructor next week. And so I think he's got some good things for us like Macon does tonight. So with any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Macon and let him go with it.
All right, so just a few kudos before we get started. Thanks to John for moderating this and dealing with all the technological issues. I know that can be a headache. I know that firsthand from the instructing that I do. In addition, Dwayne, thank you so much for the opening prayer, and I will echo that as well. Wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. And Mike, thanks for the opportunity to get on here and talk for a few minutes about some stuff that I think is really, really important, especially since we have two associations that are going to be working hand in hand, and we'll have some crossover. All right, and additionally, lots of you guys on here are my good friends, and it's always great to see y'all. Wish I could see y'all face to face, but this is definitely the next best thing. Just a quick disclaimer. I understand that there are several guys on here that have obviously many more years of experience officiating than I do, and in no way am I trying to come across as better than you, as more experienced than you. I'm simply sharing the knowledge that I've gained over the years that I have been officiating from several great mentors, in addition to the training that I received at the Minor League Baseball Umpire Academy last January and February. Okay, so this is a very quick disclaimer. A lot of what I talk about tonight as well will be refreshers for the majority of people. But I do remember Mike indicating that we have 8 new officials spread out across the 2 associations. So I think it's very important that those of us who do have more experience, we kind of teach to the level of those officials and make sure that we're not leaving them behind when we have these discussions. All right, so I think it's very important that these new officials are very much on board with the standards that we have for both associations, in addition to the expectations that we have in terms of off-field conduct, administrative duties, and then how we do things on the field with regard to mechanics, for example. And Jay Pierce, as Mike alluded to just a few minutes ago, will obviously go much more in depth with mechanics in the next clinic than I will here on this clinic. I'm simply going to just lay a basic foundation, and Jay can absolutely take off with the more in-depth discussions regarding mechanics as we move forward. So I am a collegiate instructor when I'm not umpiring baseball, so of course I had to create a PowerPoint. So I've created a very brief PowerPoint, and I'm going to go and share that with you really quickly if everything works just fine. Share this PowerPoint with you, and then we'll get rolling. Okay, so again, welcome into our first mechanical clinic of the year, following Greg's really good rules presentation that we had a short time ago. All right, so welcome in. I look forward to doing this. Just a very brief table of contents of what we're going to discuss as we go through this 30 to 45 minutes. I do have a tendency to get long-winded sometimes, so somebody had to send me a private message to say, hey, mate, you're talking a little too much. All right, so just a very brief overview of what we're going to discuss tonight. I'll have a very brief opening in just a second. I always do this in my college classes. I call it tonight's flavor. So in other words, what's the theme of our discussion going to be this evening? And I'll get to that in just a few minutes. The meat of our presentation tonight in our clinic will be the association standards and expectations. And again, that's going to cover our off-field protocol and then our on-field protocol in terms of appearance, professionalism, and some very, as I said, some very basic foundation of mechanics. We'll finish up with some food for thought that will tie in with tonight's flavor, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that may come about as we discuss this presentation. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do for our new guys, and even so for some of our veterans, so you want to be an umpire or so you still want to be an umpire. So let me share a new tab with you, and I'll show you one of these plays that we have here. And I think this play that I'm about to show you is extremely appropriate for the year 2020, because this has definitely been a year to forget. I think we will probably all agree with that. All right. So here is our quick 20-second play for this evening. Oh my gosh, look at this.
Everybody's in play. They both advance. The throw's a winner. The Astros are going to win it. The Astros are going to win. Unbelievable. A ball that went about 5 feet in front of home plate. From the stretch.
So again, I believe that we can all agree that that play is extremely appropriate for the year 2020. And you can imagine that a manager's going to come out saying, oh, there's got to be something on that play. There was umpire interference or the batter interfered. Something crazy had to happen. All right, so again, that was just a very brief opening there for the new guys getting in the game, that some crazy things can absolutely happen. Let me get back to our PowerPoint. Okay, after a play like that, most likely, as I said, you're going to have a coach come out and say something crazy. You might get some faces like this, you know, the famous Lou Piniella, or you might get the infamous Buck Weaver. All right, same thing here. Hopefully, we don't handle situations like this, but you know, just some funny little clips for you there, just to kind of get things off on a fresh start. Okay, so tonight's flavor. Here's the main theme for tonight's presentation that I really want to discuss and drive home. And it's a word that we have all heard till you really get sick of it, and that's consistency. All right, so what type of consistency am I talking about? All right, so let's keep that in mind as I move forward. So am I talking about consistency regarding calling the ball fair, calling the ball foul? Am I talking about consistency with our safe and out calls on our bangers at first base or steals at second base? Or am I talking about consistency with strike zone, balls and strikes? So we've all heard this so many times. I just need you to be consistent. All we ask for is you to be consistent, all right? And we've all heard of that dad who's sitting at a 90-degree angle to home plate yelling at you to get the pitch on the outside corner. But that's not the type of consistency that I'm talking about tonight. Again, I alluded in my opening that we have two associations. We have a group from Wilmington, the ACUA, and then we have our predominantly Fayetteville group, the SSOA. So I think it's extremely important that regardless of having two associations, we need to make sure that we have one umpiring style. So it's extremely important that the way that we handle situations, the way that we enforce rules, the way that we utilize our mechanics are all in line with one another, especially since we will have guys who travel from Wilmington to Fayetteville and work with some of those guys or ladies, and then or vice versa. We have some people travel from the Fayetteville area and work with some men and women in the Wilmington area. So at that point, it becomes extremely important that with the larger volume of umpires that we really make sure that we have a singular type or method for umpiring, so we have consistency across our two associations. All right, this is also very important that coaches understand that no matter where the official comes from, whether it's from the Wilmington area or whether it's from the Fayetteville area, that he knows that he is going to get the same consistent style of umpiring regardless of where the umpire originates from. And something that really frustrates me that I've heard, umpiring games or even sitting in the stands at games, you'll hear fans say, oh, well, this group is from this region of the state. You can tell they're not very good. Or you'll hear some guy say, oh, that group is from the western part of the state. They're really, really bad. I think that's really disheartening, especially for me, because I think that we should absolutely have, again, a consistent, singular method for umpiring. So you can't tell a difference between associations. And I think that's really what Mike's main goal is here, having the ACUA and the SSOA, that no matter where you come from, we have that singular umpiring style and a consistent style across the associations to give the absolute best product to our coaches and our players, regardless of where the school is. So the following 5 bullets that I have set up here, in my opinion, I think if you do each of these 5 aspects or things consistently, judgment will come. So judgment can be developed. I mean, obviously some people just can't ever get it, sure. But I think the majority of people, your judgment improves the more reps that you get or the more dirt that you get on your shoes, for lack of a better quote. But these 5 aspects here have to be mastered prior to your judgment being very sound. Because if you can't do these 5 aspects that I have listed here on the slide consistently, then we have an issue. Your judgment doesn't really matter, okay? So the 5 aspects that I think are really, really important before you ever make a ball call, a strike call, safe, out, fair, foul, are these. Off-field responsibilities, and we'll get into these as I progress. Your appearance, very, very important. All right, a really good friend of mine is also a regional supervisor in the state, says that the large portion of umpiring is being a salesman. Okay, so your appearance is very, very important. Rules knowledge goes without saying. You obviously have to understand the rules in order to manage a game appropriately and to ensure that the game is administered fairly. Mechanics. All right, now I'm not talking about mechanics in terms of having a 90-degree angle when we call somebody out, or our hands coming straight up, straight out on safe calls. I'm talking more about our positioning based on where the runners are placed. All right, and also just some very brief plate mechanics that I'll go over this evening as well. And then situation management. Okay, but situation management is going to be aided based on how you handle your off-field responsibilities, how you look when you walk on the field, and how you carry yourself while you're on the field, your knowledge of the rules whenever a situation does arise, and then lastly, your mechanics and your hustle and your want to on the field, your effort on the field. Situation management becomes much easier if you check the boxes next to those 4 aspects that I just listed above situation management. Okay, so for my newer guys, let me just refresh our veteran guys, and this might be brand new to our younger officials, our rookie officials. So what are off-field responsibilities? All right, and what's the important aspect of off-field responsibilities? Communication. Hands down, communication is key. All right, so I came up with this little GIF here. Communication is key, and then I'll reiterate that on the next slide. Communication is extremely important in terms of your off-field responsibilities. Okay, so who do we communicate with? Who is important to communicate with off the field prior to ever going to our game location, our game site? Your regional supervisor, for one. Okay, so for example, Mike sends out emails asking for contracts to be returned and booking fees to be returned. We really need to be prompt with that. That creates a solid, effective working relationship with your regional supervisor. And the regional supervisor may look at you with a little more favor if you're very prompt with returning emails, answering phone calls, text messages, getting your paperwork in. Hands down, a regional supervisor or booking agent's largest headache or biggest headache is going to be keeping up with availability and blocks. All right, it's really not a good look for officials to have a wide open schedule, and you maintain that wide open schedule. You get your games assigned, and then you have to turn back several games because you didn't do your part and maintain your responsibility of keeping your blocks up to date. All right, that actually kind of makes you a high maintenance official and a headache for the regional supervisor, which can lead to loss of games, just to be quite honest with everybody and straight up with everybody. So it's not very difficult to maintain your schedule and have your blocks up to date. All right, that's something that is very easy to do, doesn't take too much time, and Mike will work with you on that, especially if you have a work issue come up or family issue come up. So things like that are obviously the exceptions to the rule, but if you have something planned in advance, go in on Arbiter or on Dragonfly, whichever one we're going to use, and make sure that you have your schedule and your blocks up to date just to alleviate some headaches. Really important communication is with your partner. So prior to the game, 48 hours is a great cutoff for it. You don't want to contact your partner less than 48 hours prior to a game. Okay, you need to confirm with your partner. Call your partner. Don't necessarily text your partner. You know, it's a little easier in a lot of cases to pick up the phone and talk. So call your partner, confirm and clarify, the date and the time of the game. Just to be sure, this game's on a Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Correct? Yes. We both agree with that. Ensure that you have worked out which uniform that you're going to wear for that game. Make sure that you are absolutely matching. Nothing looks worse than one official going out there with a black shirt on and another one going out with a blue shirt on. Looks really, really bad. Looks unprofessional and kind of gets us off to a poor start in the eyes of the public and the coaches and players and the ADs. Okay. It's also very important to confirm your arrival time. So if you have a 7 p.m. game, a good rule of thumb is to be an hour early. You absolutely don't want to be any less than 45 minutes before game time. So 45 minutes or later would be better. So games at 7 o'clock, show up no later than 6:15. At 6 o'clock is a little bit better. Gives you time to kind of relax, get out of your mindset of work or whatever you've had going on that day. Sit down, relax for a few minutes, chat with your partner, and it also gives you time to get dressed without hurrying and have a really solid pregame, which is very important to making sure that we handle things on the field appropriately. And then lastly, the parking and dressing location. Nothing's worse than rolling up to the field and saying, oh crap, I forgot to confirm where we're going to park. And you've got one partner parked on the third base side, and then you've got the other partner parked out in the right field fence. All right. So just confirm those things. 2-minute phone calls will do. Just communicate with your partners. Again, communication is key. All right. And then all of these off-field responsibilities lead to our on-field responsibilities. And just keep this in mind as well. And I know we've all heard this, but it's very important to keep this in mind and reiterate. Who do you represent when you step on a baseball field, when you arrive on location at a specific school? Obviously, you're representing yourself. But beyond that, you're representing your crew that's there with you that evening. Beyond that, you're representing your specific association. Beyond that, you're representing the NCHSAA. And beyond that, you are representing the entire umpiring community. So The phrase that Mike has really drilled in a lot of his associations that I've been with him at, and also that Mark drills in from the NCHSAA, is what you permit, you promote. So keep that in mind whenever you're handling situations off the field and on the field, and keep in mind who you represent. All right, whatever you allow to happen on a field one evening is going to make it either easier for the following crew to come in whenever they come in and handle a situation, or very difficult for a crew to come in and handle a situation if you didn't take care of business that night. So again, always be cognizant of who you're representing when you arrive on site, and especially when you step on the baseball diamond. Okay, so these are very easy things to do that take absolutely zero effort, all right, and will absolutely lead to less trouble and better game management whenever you actually put the ball in play and we get rolling. So appearance, okay, so we'll just go from top to bottom. Hats, okay, hats should be clean. Nothing looks worse than an official stepping out on the field and the hat has just got sweat rings all over it. It just doesn't look professional. Okay, and again, we are salesmen. All right, that's a large portion of what we do. So hats need to be clean, and it even looks better if you crease them. All right, across the crown, as you can see in number 5 here. You can see my cursor highlighting the crease. It just looks really sharp, and it separates you as the umpire from the player. Shirt and pants. All right, with your partner, your shirt and your pants have to match. Now, I understand at the high school level, we don't all have to wear poly spandex pants. Some person might have on Jerry Davis pants and the other might be wearing Honix pants. That's okay. But make sure that your shirts match, okay? And make sure that your shirts aren't purple looking or brown looking because they've been sitting in your truck or your van or your car just fading in the sun for 3 years. All right, so just spend a little bit of money, invest a little bit of money to add to your appearance, because again, that will help you during your management of the game. All right, make sure your pants and shirt are pressed too. All right, really sharp creased pants look a lot better than wrinkled pants. And again, it's just the first impression that you give the public, coaches, and players goes a long way whenever you have a whacker in the bottom of the 7th inning that decides the game. Shoes. All right, if you have black shoes, it's a lot easier to maintain and keep them clean than is shoes that have the white trim on the bottom like I'll wear and like a lot of us wear. All right, make sure that your shoes are clean as well. All right, it takes a little bit of time to do this, sure, but again, shoes need to be clean and polished just to add to that really sharp look and help out with those first impressions when you walk through the gates heading onto the field of your positions. And then grooming. I personally think that clean shaven looks better, but I understand that that's not going to happen in high school sports. Just be nice and clean with it. You know, keep it neat. You know, if you have a mustache, you know, let's not Raleigh fingers it or something like that. You know, just keep it really neat and professional looking. Okay, and again, I know a lot of this is refresher for lots of you, but again, it's very important that our young guys understand this as well. Okay, just a model for appearance right. Okay, obviously these are minor league guys, but you know, this looks really, really sharp. You know, the pants are creased, pants are pressed, the shirt's tucked in nicely, it fits them well, their hats are clean, their shoes are clean. All right, so we would like to look like this in terms of our garments whenever we step out on the field, because again, that first impression goes a long, long ways. Okay, now we're going to segue over to our rules knowledge. Okay, again, this goes without saying. All right, if you don't know the rules, there will be a play that will eventually find you that will expose your lack of rule knowledge. Okay, and from personal experience, there is much more to the game that you must know as an umpire than you do as a player. So when I was a player, I always thought, well, heck, I know the game really well. I knew what I needed to know as a player, but I didn't really understand the intricacies of all the rules until I put on the officiating shirt and became an umpire. And then at umpire school, or the umpire academy, it was just absolutely amazing, you know, how in depth we went with the rules and the knowledge that we gained from that. So it's very important, and I know it takes time, but it's really, really crucially important that you know the rules. Okay, I know that the rules books can be kind of wordy every now and then, but again, if you don't know the rules, there will be a play that finds you eventually that will expose your lack of knowledge, and then you're in a big mess. All right, so there's no reason for any of us not to be very adept with the knowledge of the rules. Okay, and I think Greg will really like that. I said that too, since he is our rules man. Okay, but even though You know the rules very, very well. There's always going to be one coach, even if you quote the rule book verbatim to him. On a runner's lane interference, for example, that's going to come out and hit you with one of these. Whatever, those rules aren't real. Or I've never even heard that before. Where did that rule come from? Okay, but again, knowing the rules, and I know it's just a funny slide, but knowing the rules really helps with your game management, and it helps you to diffuse situations if you can respond to the coaches with rule book terminology. Okay, and that really gets you out of a lot of trouble if you do have to eject as well, writing that in ejection reports. Okay, all right, so that is essentially the first part of what I wanted to cover. And it looks like I'm doing good on time. Now I want to segue over into mechanics to make sure that we're doing this consistently. Again, judgment will come with more dirt on the shoes, seeing more plays, seeing more pitches. Judgment can be developed. Mechanics, there's really no reason for us not to have, again, that singular style of umpiring where our mechanics are totally consistent, regardless of whether we're from Wilmington or whether we're from Fayetteville. All right, it's very important that we are totally consistent with our mechanical issues across our associations. Okay, so again, Jay is going to get really in depth with this the next clinic, but I'm just going to lay a very basic foundation. All right, and hopefully clear up some areas that have been slightly controversial in terms of our mechanics over the past few years. All right, so we're going to talk about plate work. I'll discuss feet placement and the slot, and that will be that's always good for any level of experience to refresh on, and then base work. All right, so I'll talk about the starting positions, which are extremely crucially important to make sure that you are in the correct position whenever plays do happen. Working the two umpire system, obviously we have to sacrifice lots of distance in order to gain our best angle. So that starting position is vitally important to ensure that we are in the correct position and have the best angle whenever there's a play that's happening, especially when you have multiple runners on the bases that you're responsible for as the base umpire. All right, the ready position, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about our starting positions, again, based on the placement of our runners. All right, so where the runners are on the bases at the time of the pitch. And then we've all heard this, and this is something that hard habits or old habits do die hard. And some people might not agree with this, but this is an evolution of umpiring. So we've all heard of the A slot, B slot, and C slot. All right. I would highly, strongly encourage you to totally throw that in the wastebasket. A, B, and C is outdated, overused, and it's not the appropriate terminology anymore. Okay? So the appropriate terminology whenever we are referring to the B slot or the C slot, the B slot will be referred to as the first base side, and the C slot will be referred to as the third base side. Okay, so A, B, and C is no longer. All right, the appropriate terminology, again, is first base side and third base side. Okay, hopefully I don't get too mad at me for that. But again, that is an evolution of umpiring. First base side and third base side. A, B, and C, throw in the trash. Okay? All right, so let's talk about some very basic plate work. All right, we've all heard of being squared off. I've heard of a plate stance called a super slot. We've all heard of heel toe. All right, but the appropriate plate stance as an umpire on right-handed batters, and I'll show you a picture for left-handed batters as well, is going to be heel to instep. All right, heel to instep. So on right-handed batters, we're obviously going to have our left foot forward. All right, and then our right foot is going to be approximately in the neighborhood directly or splitting the catcher somewhere. So essentially, you can take the center point of your body just as a very rough guide, the center point of your body, and put it on the inside corner. And you should be in a relatively good position to see the entirety of the plate. Okay, so for right-handed batters, you take your left foot, move that one forward, and then your right foot is going to be behind the catcher. And again, it is heel to instep. All right, we're not squared off. We're not super slot. We're not heel to toe. We are heel to instep. All right, so that is the appropriate plate stance, as you see on the screen, for right-handed batters. Okay?
Hey, Macon.
Yes.
Greg's got a question.
Okay. Question.
No, I'm sorry. That was an accident on my part.
It was an accident. No problem at all. No problem at all. All right. So we'll just pick right up with that. Left-handed batters. Okay. Again, we're simply switching which foot goes forward, but we're maintaining that heel to instep stance for left-handed batters. Okay, so not heel to toe, not super slot, not squared off. We're heel to instep. That is the appropriate taut plate stance to see the pitches optimally. All right, and then the slot. All right, the slot is very, very important for two main reasons. All right, number one, we obviously all want to see the strike zone appropriately so we're not missing pitches. So if you work the slot appropriately and effectively, you should be able to see the low outside pitch, which is what a lot of people refer to as the scholarship pitch or the money pitch. All right, so that's where a lot of pitchers really like to try and hit, is that low outside corner, hollow of the knee, right on the black on the outside corner. All right, if you're not working in the slot appropriately, your vision or your view might be obscured by the catcher's helmet. Okay, so as you can see here, this is Major League umpire Marvin Hudson. All right, you see that in this green area here, he is going to have the best angle for seeing this low outside pitch. All right, again, if you're having a difficult time seeing the bottom portion of the strike zone, that can become an issue. Obviously, you're not seeing part of the strike zone. Okay, so the slot will ensure that you are getting the best optimal view of the strike zone. And the second main reason, or very, very important reason why you want to work in the slot, is safety. Okay, so you're less likely to be hit by a foul ball coming off of the batter's bat if you're in this green zone here, right, as opposed to being in the yellow or the red zone. So typically, almost all the time, you never want to work directly over the catcher, and you absolutely don't want to move towards the center portion of the plate. Moving towards the center portion of the plate, again, gets you in this yellow and this red zone and really puts you at risk for catching a ringer, off the bat, that can lead to concussions and other issues. So again, two main reasons for working the slot. Number one is vision of the strike zone to make sure you're seeing the low outside pitch in the bottom of the zone. Additionally, it's for safety to make sure that we're not really getting run by foul balls coming off the batter's bat. Okay, now just going to go through some basic starting positions of where you should set up. Okay, and one of the most controversial ones that I've heard among umpires over the past several years is, where do you set up with runners on first and third? Do you go back to the B slot whenever there's two outs and a runner on third base only? So we're going to debunk all of those myths, if you will, tonight. And the following slides, they're going to be very brief, and I've got some quick illustrations for you that will show you exactly where you need to be. All right, and if you have any issues or you have any questions about it, always reference this. This is exactly where you should set up based on the placement of the runners. Okay, so with no runners on, obviously we have our plate umpire behind the plate, goes without saying. And then we have our first base umpire, who's going to be stationed 10 to 12 feet beyond the first baseman when he is playing in a normal position. Okay, so obviously if the first baseman starts to move up even with the base path, we can't get that close to the base. All right, so you want to maintain an appropriate distance from the base, but whenever the first baseman is playing in a normal position, we typically want to be 10 to 12 feet behind that first baseman. And your entire body should be in foul territory. Why is that? If a line shot's hit down the line, or a really sharp ground ball hits you, and you're in foul territory, most likely it's going to be a foul ball unless it's bounced over the bag, obviously. Okay, so always be in foul territory, completely in foul territory, close to the line, but completely in foul territory. And very importantly, make sure that your chest and your head is square to home plate, because that's where the play is going to be happening. All right, you'll hear this so much from a lot of us in the association: chest to ball, chest to ball, chest to ball. So the play is happening at the plate when the pitch is thrown and the batter swings. So you want your chest totally square to home plate. Okay. All right, with the runner on first, again, we have our plate umpire, and then we have our base umpire on the first base side, formerly known as the B slot. All right, but it's the first base side. Okay, so just to orient you here with the position, you should be roughly halfway between the pitcher's rubber and second base. And then you should draw an imaginary line from the point of home plate and a tandem line through the grass dirt line and this should be your optimal starting position. Again, starting position is crucial, and I'm sure Jay will talk about this in his next clinic. Starting position is extremely important with regard to having the appropriate angle for plays on the bases, especially when you have multiple runners. Okay, so a quick refresher: you're going to be halfway between second base and the pitcher's rubber, and you want to draw an imaginary line from the point of the plate through the grass dirt line right through the center of your body. And on that tandem line is where you should be set up with a runner on first base. Okay. Now, R1, R3. I've heard lots of guys say, you should be on the first base side. Then other people say, no, you should be on the third base side. So which one is it? We're about to find out. Plate umpire, obviously behind the plate again. The base umpire is going to be on the first base side always. Never with runners on first and third should you be on the third base side at all. R1, R3, runners on first, runners on third, you should always be on the first base side. Why is that, you may ask? Well, for my veterans, you know, with a runner on first base only and a ball hit through the infield, you have a rotation. The home plate umpire, if there's a play at third base on R1, will move down to the third base position and have this play at third base on the runner if one develops. Well, R1, R3, you work the exact same way. You work the exact same way. So the base umpire is on the first base side in R1, the base umpire is on the first base side in R1, R3, because again, it is a rotation. On a ball hit through the infield, the home plate umpire will move down to third baseline, look over his shoulder and see R3 touch on plate, and then he will have any ensuing play at third base on R1. Okay, so R1 and R3 are umpired exactly the same. Therefore, the base umpire should always be on the first base side for your starting position. Okay, so R1, R3, base umpire, first base side, always. Okay, R2, we have a runner in scoring position. Base umpire is going to be on the third base side, formerly known as the C slot. All right, so the third base side is where the base umpire will be with runner on second only. And again, same concept applies. You're halfway between second base, halfway between the pitcher's rubber. On a tandem line from the point of home plate through this grass dirt line to the center part of your body. Okay, and again, starting position, so important. R3 only. All right, some guys say, well, I'm going back over to the first base side with a runner on third only with 2 outs because most likely the play is going to be at first base. Well, I don't disagree with you there. That's simply the incorrect mechanic. Okay, you should always be on the third base side with a runner on third only. All right, moving back to the first base side with a runner on third only is a 3-man mechanic. Okay, and that is totally incorrect for a 2-umpire system. All right, so if you are working 2-man mechanics in these associations, or ACUA or SSOA, or if you're working both, with a runner on third base only, you should always be on the third base side. The number of outs is irrelevant in a 2-umpire system. Okay, R1 and R2. All right, there is a specific rotation for this play that I will let Jay cover more in depth next clinic. But R1 and R2, the base umpire is going to be on the third base side. Okay, runners in scoring position, you typically want to be on the third base side with the exception of R1 and R3. Okay. R2, R3, same concept. Base umpire is going to be on the third base side, halfway between second base and the pitcher's rubber on a tandem line from the point of home plate through that grass dirt line on the pitcher's mound straight to the center of your body. Bases loaded, runners in scoring position. Again, the base umpire is going to be on the third base side. Okay, so just a very quick wrap up on those scenarios. The only time as the base umpire, and it's so easy to remember this one, the only way that you will be on the first base side as the base umpire in a 2-umpire system is if there is a runner on first only, or if there are runners on first and third. Okay, any other time you're going to be on the third base side because again the number of outs is irrelevant. Okay, And also as a hint to the plate umpire, if you're relatively new and you're not totally clear with all of your rotations, if you have a base umpire who knows what they're doing, and the base umpire knows that he's going to be on the first base side with runner on first only, or runners on first and third, that should be a clue to the plate umpire that whenever your base umpire is on the first base side, you have a rotation. Okay? So whenever the base umpire generally is on the first base side, the plate umpire has a rotation. All right, so just keep that in mind. And Jay can clarify that in the next one. Okay? So that's the very foundations of our starting positions based on runner placement. And I hope that we will absolutely maintain this type of consistency regarding our starting positions based on runner placement, regardless of what association that you're in. Okay, because this is the expectation for the ACUA and the SSOA. All right, from here on. All right, this is the absolute expectation. All right, if you're eval'd, this is what the evaluator would expect you to do as he's evaluating or she is evaluating. All right, and then lastly, again, for professionalism's sake, for appearance's sake, whenever we're in our starting positions, what should we look like? We should be hands on knees set. Whenever the pitcher has toed the rubber, we should be hands on knees set. That means that we are totally locked in on where the ball is. We're totally locked in on the pitcher to ensure that he is not doing something illegal, whether he's in an illegal pitching position or we're also laser focused on any type of balks. Okay, so we should not just be standing up, checking out the concession stand whenever the pitcher is on the rubber. All right, lots of people think that when the pitcher comes set, that's when you should get set. No, whenever the pitcher toes the rubber, you should be hands on knees set. All right, does it get a little bit tiring? Absolutely. However, a high school game lasts, I would guess, an average, if you do it correctly, an hour and 45 to 2 hours. Okay? And we're getting paid. We're getting paid $71. So we need to go out there and work really hard. It's not that difficult to be hands on knee set every time a pitcher toes the rubber. It also looks really, really good to your coaches, your ADs, and to the general public because you look very engaged, and you are very engaged. Okay? And then I'm getting really close to wrapping up. Situation management, okay? Situation management is absolutely something that I included have to get better at each year that we umpire, each game we umpire, or each situation that we encounter. This is something that, I heard at the Umpire Academy that one of the main things that separates Major League umpires from your really, really good AAA umpires is their ability to handle situations. So situation management is crucial in terms of making sure that you have a very nice, smooth flowing game. Okay, and again, this is something that we should strive to get better at each situation that arises. Okay, obviously the picture in the top right corner, we don't want to handle it that way. That is the George Brett incident, and we understand why that umpire called George Brett. But if you look at Jim Wolf here in the bigger picture, he's holding his ground. He looks very professional. The manager's been ejected at the time. And, he's doing a really good job. And then this next picture right here, we all saw this debacle. This manager was totally unprofessional with the way he handled this situation. And this umpire is actually one of my instructors and a great guy. He handled this situation from what we saw and what we learned at the Umpire Academy just perfect. And less is more. The less that you say in situations and using that rule book terminology as well, makes ejection reports a lot easier to write. You definitely don't want to get into the jabbering with the manager when they're really upset. And you really like to try and de-escalate the situation if possible. Okay? And then a few tiers for situation management. Okay?
5 minutes.
I'm sorry?
5 minutes.
All right. I'm actually wrapping up right now. So situation management, all right? Just our 5 tiers that we want to enforce during our high school seasons. All right. The first thing you can do whenever you have an unruly manager or coach is you can acknowledge them. All right. If they're barking at you out of the dugout on balls and strikes and you're just getting a little tired of hearing it, it's okay to just give them a look over that way. All right. You're telling them that, hey, I hear you. I've acknowledged you. Let's try and tone that down a little bit. All right. Sometimes all it takes is a look. All right. So acknowledgement. Sometimes you might have to increase that to a verbal warning. Hey, coach, this is your verbal warning. All right. I've heard enough. All right. It's really important, though, for the sake of high school baseball, that you say the word warning. And if anybody on here works college baseball, we know the NCAA is very, very, very much sticklers on saying the word warnings. All right. Our next step up in the tier would be a written warning. Okay, a written warning. Hey, coach, you've had your verbal warning. This is your official written warning, and you would document that on your lineup card. Okay. Following the written warning, you can restrict to the dugout if you deem that necessary. And then obviously, as our last resort, we sometimes have to eject head coaches, managers, assistant coaches, players. Hopefully we don't have to eject any fans. However, that can happen every now and then. But understand also, based on the severity of the situation, you don't have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before you eject. If you have a manager that just goes absolutely ballistic, or a player who goes absolutely ballistic, it's okay to go straight to number 5. If that is an ejection that can be upheld, again, based on the severity of the situation. But we would really like, if possible, to keep people in the game as much as possible, which goes back to, again, trying to de-escalate situations if we can. All right. And again, these are the 5 tools available to you to handle situations. And again, if we can avoid ejection, great. Sometimes it is just part of the game then. All right. So we've talked about, again, tonight's flavor, as I call it. All right. And this food for thought that ties into tonight's flavor. So our flavor, our main theme was consistency, again, between the ACUA and the SSOA. So we are putting a singular method of umpiring on the field each time we go on the field, regardless of where the umpire comes from and regardless of which game we're working in whatever region. All right. So just some 3 little quotes that I like to leave you with that I think really drive home what I've said here tonight. So it isn't enough for an umpire to merely know what he's doing. He has to look as though he knows what he's doing too. All right. That goes back to our appearance and professionalism. You are actually judged as soon as you walk on the baseball field before you ever make a single call. People already have their mind made up of what type of umpire that you are. As soon as you step through the gates, your mind's made up already. Okay. Second quote: the best umpired game is the game in which the fans cannot recall the umpires who worked it. That's the greatest compliment that you'll ever get. If somebody says, "Oh, I don't even remember who umpired that game," or if you tell somebody, "Oh yeah, I worked that game 2 weeks ago." "Oh, I didn't even know that was you. I don't even remember the umpires." That's the greatest compliment that you can get following a game. Is if you go there, do your job, and get out, nobody even remembers you. Because in fact, this is a thankless job. All right, just the beast of the business. And this was a Hall of Fame umpire, Bill Clem, that actually made this quote as well. And then this one right here is my all-time favorite by Ford Frick. Take pride in your work at all times. And this goes beyond baseball. Take pride in your work at all times. Remember, respect for an umpire is created off the field as well as on. And I think that's a very good wrap-up for the entire presentation that we've done tonight. Sure, it's very, very important what you do on the field, how you talk with people, how you hustle, the effort that you put in, your judgment. But the stuff that you do off the field is extremely important as well. All right, and again, remember that whenever you step on a baseball field, whenever you arrive on site for a game, you're representing yourself, the association, and the umpiring fraternity. Okay. With that wraps up what I wanted to cover tonight, and I really, really appreciate everybody giving me some of your time this evening, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too boring. And if you have any questions, feel free to fire them off at me now, or send me a personal email or text or call, and I'll be glad to answer whatever I can answer.
Guys, we got about 5 or 6 more minutes. If anybody's Q&A, if anybody's got any questions that you want to ask Macon, I think that's pretty good. I do appreciate him taking his time to do this. Some of you may or may not know, he's also, I call him Professor. He's at North Carolina Wesleyan. Call him Professor. So, but if you got any questions, shoot them to him right now. It's be a good moment. We'll take questions till about 9:55.
Also, guys, if you didn't do the attendance, I put the name of the ones who are in the attendance that I don't have. So you need to go over there and do it, or you are not here.